Yeah, my name's Tim Eades. I'm the CEO of Vmware. I've been involved in about, in the last 8 or 9 years, probably 8 or 9 acquisitions, depending on board member, executive, CEO, whatever it is. I'm an investor in about 15 different companies as a private investor. I sit on the board of 3 companies. I run a company, and I own equity in about, 7 or 8 different venture funds, and including 2 private equity. So work pretty hard, really. I have a weird lifestyle, but what the hell, it works. One of the things they do, as far as everyone know, is I guard my lifestyle in little pockets. So I work probably from about 5:30 in the morning to about 9 o'clock every night. But on Saturday mornings, you can catch me before 8:45 in the morning. And then my wife wakes up. And then after 2 o'clock every Saturday, every Sunday, I spend time with different entrepreneurs to help them shape them different ways. So an example of a company that I'm shaping at the moment is a company called Unveil, a security company doing searchable encryption. I talk to the CEO literally every Saturday at 2 o'clock and have done for 4 months. Just to help her, shape her, grow her, and become a better entrepreneur. So this presentation, Andreessen Horowitz asked me to do a presentation after I sold my last company to all the HR directors in North America that they could put in one room. So the HR director for PG&E and Juniper, everybody in the one room, about how do you shape a company and different roles of different people at different times. So this is the presentation. That's my office. And the record sleeves in at the back, the name of the album represents a mood of a startup and how you feel in a startup. And so as you walk in, it's one of the albums is called Complete Madness, because that's what it likes to be in a startup. Hopefully this works. All right. So a little bit I've got about the kind of the personalities, of the objective of this presentation, who we are, and stuff like that. This is working, I think. So we're going to talk about the creation, the evolution of the culture inside a startup, the changing skill sets that you go through at different stages, what that has meant for Vmware, my current company, what it meant at Silvertail, my last company, and how the people changed, how the roles of the founders changed, how you found them a role, how the board changed, and how that built and grew the company. So a few seconds on Vmware, right? We've raised about 80-odd million bucks. Got 200 enterprises, 230 enterprises using the product around the world. We're fanatical about our patents. We believe patents is a strategy, like a spider's web. So when you build patents, most people look at patents like, I just filed a patent. And honestly, it's completely useless. What you have to do when you build, when you're filing patents, you have to look at them like a spider's web. So if somebody trips on one, they trip on all of them. And so building a patent strategy is really important. So we spent a lot of time on that. We have 17 right now, 17 or 18, like another 28 pending. And here's what we do, right? We believe that data centers and clouds should be more like a submarine. In a submarine, the nuclear warheads are separate from the kitchen, and everybody gets their own bedroom. Unfortunately, data centers and clouds are not built that way, so if a bad guy gets in one place, he can go any place. So, we divide it into chunks. But what we did when we were building the company is we kind of take the lessons, and I think if you're building a company today, you need to look at the lessons from Seattle. Amazon and Azure are teaching entrepreneurs, if they're smart enough, everything they need to know. Where the UI is the platform, right, number one. And what do you need to do? You need to install quick, show value fast, price to the line of business, and kill something in security. Nobody wants adjacent products. They need more value from the existing products. So you need to be able to go in and consume other offerings, right? Because the complexity of all these single instance products has caused a weakness in the first place. So we go into a company, and let's say you're a healthcare company, you could literally install the product in 15 minutes. In data center security or cloud, and segment this, can't talk to that, within an hour. So it takes friction out of your sales model, but you've got to apply the lessons that Seattle is teaching you. So, and the example of the consumption issues, as in kill the adjacent products, look at, Amazon announced a web application firewall, and Imperva went private within 7 months. Who wants info blocks right now? DNS redirect services is a click on Amazon. So as you start to think of the UI as the ultimate platform, and you can integrate services through APIs, you can start to do interesting things, both economically and technically. So that's what we do. We go in, we do that we're very vertically orientated. We do have customers in colleges and universities and e-commerce providers, but we very much focus on regulated industries, because in security, you should look at security a bit like if you think about it, seatbelts in cars, right? So here's an example. In 1968, it became law for every new car to have a seatbelt in North America. But it wasn't until 1984 that New York State said you actually had to wear it. So what drives our business is compliance, right? Somebody has to say this can no longer talk to that. So that's what we do, right? So we drive to industries, healthcare, service providers, banking, critical infrastructure that need segmentation, and somebody's going to tell them to do it. And in the last, I don't know, year and a bit, every single regulator's come out, PCI, HIPAA, CBAST, GDPR, saying you need to segment your network and cloud. So that's driven our business incredibly. About 3 years ago, if you were trying to raise a startup and you said, we do breach detection, and you had 2 monkeys in a PowerPoint slide, you could have got funded. Now, getting your startup funded is way harder, and you have to do something that's real and valuable and sticky. And obviously, when we go in, we segment things, we take out the old firewalls, because you go after budgets. And so our parallel is to VMware, right? So when VMware came along, they said, stop buying compute. Don't buy servers anymore, right? Because no one wants to buy servers. And so they just virtualized, right? So we go along and say, stop buying appliances. So that's why it says no appliances, because nobody wants to buy appliances. It's just a click. So that's how we do it. Anyway, back to the fun stuff of building companies, if I can make this thing work. So this is a picture from our old Pushbus here, from our old company, where we started in this apartment, right? And the fridge is right there, and that's the network. So when you open up the door, if you opened it up too wide, you knocked out the network. So when you start off small, I wanted to give you some perspective. And when some of our government customers came in and they were looking at it like, that's your network and that's the refrigerator door. We took this bedroom in an apartment and made it into a conference room and stuff like that. So that's when we start small. I wanted you to understand where ground zero was, and that's where ground zero was that was for Silvertel. So I think when you start companies and you're starting to build companies, you've got to look at the philosophy that which you want to have, right? So these are kind of the pillars that I kind of lean on. Transparency, right? We have a very open, very frank, open culture. Collaboration with a tiebreaker. You are the CEO, you want to build it, you are managers, but you need to be, you need to collaborate and empower. We have an open cube. Communication transparency, the daily welcome. So I'll give you a great example. So at Silvertel, where we used to work, if anybody was in the office before me, I would punch them in the arm when I walked in. Only gently, right? But I would literally walk around, punch them. Because you're trying to build this thing shoulder to shoulder. You do not build this thing by being hierarchical. So by walking in, people literally used to put their arm up going, I'm in before you. And then they expected the punch. And one day we were in this office, and this guy was waiting for me, and I came in on the phone, and he was in the reception area, and I walked in, and there must have been 25 people in the room before me, and I walked around and punched them all. And the office manager said, this person's waiting for you. And they're like, did you just punch everybody as you walked in? I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how it rolls. New employee engagement, you've got to, at Vmware, this is a great story about Vmware. When we moved to our plush new offices, and we have nice offices in Castro, I make a point of opening the door to just about everybody I possibly can. I don't care if it's a FedEx guy, a reporter, whoever it is, and it sets the tempo, right? Everybody can do it. So if the doorbell rings, I'm one of the first people out of a meeting to open the door. And again, you got to build this thing shoulder to shoulder. And then you got to have formal and informal mechanisms of controlling your culture, and we'll talk about that, and the company values. Look at the thing across the bottom before you read the things. So you got technology development, validation, and acceleration. So as you look at the culture evolution versus revolution, as you go through different stages. The technology development phase is, obviously you've got to have high integrity, excellent in development. You've got to be impatient. You've got to be completely relentless on your innovation. But then as you start to validate it and you get your first 10, 20 customers that are serious, whatever it is, the integrity and the excellence, you've got to keep frugal the whole time. The teamwork becomes critical. And the risk kind of comes in. You start to get this weird feeling in your stomach, and then optimism kind of builds in. But then as you start to accelerate, it's an amazing thing, but the integrity and the excellence and the frugality still is there, but the empowerment and the risk, the kind of the focused work, the measurement, including performance. So a lot of the early stuff is pure gut, pure tenacity. You have got to be lean on domain expertise, incredible passion, insane tenacity, and a ridiculous curiosity. But at some point, right, you have to start to tail as you start to accelerate. So the early stages of a company, you have 95% kind of innovation and 5% productization. But as you start to rotate, you start to move to like 15% innovation and 85% on the productization. Otherwise, large companies, large banks, whatever it is, can't roll it out. So, the culture is actually quite tricky as you go through this, because lots of people want to keep innovating all the time, but you've got to productize, otherwise these large things can't deploy. So, the culture control is important. We used to do gelato events, right? So when we were in a small company, you needed to keep everybody working together. So we would shut the office down and go for ice cream. And at some point, there was like 9 of us. We would go for ice cream. And my inside sales guy would go, I don't like ice cream. I'm like, I don't care. You're going for ice cream. It's about walking down the road, talking to the QA guy, and getting some sharing about what's going on, right? And so it's quite funny. When we first did ice cream runs, we literally would shut the office, and it'd be like, I don't know, $12 for ice cream. And then when you get to like 100 people, you're actually, ice cream needs to come to us now, because when you all start to walk down the road, everybody gets kind of like freaked out. But it's very important you have a mix between unstructured and structured events. They want to see you as the CEO and the leadership team in the trenches, but don't just lean on structured events, because it's very, very bad. Executives exec staff, extended staff, we do top priorities. We hire culture consultants. So at Silvertel, for example, one of the value adds we had is that we hired a coach for anybody that wanted one. Right, we put him on retainer, and it didn't matter whether the person was in London or was in New York. He could talk to the person, he was available to the person, and he helped the person through. As you start to get bigger and you get more geographically dispersed, one of the things that we talk about a lot is around connective tissue. People need to feel connected, right? We just hired a new head of Europe, right? So he came from Barclays Bank. He ran all networks worldwide for Barclays Bank. And now he's like, and he had thousands of people report to him. Now he has 4, or I don't know, 8, whatever it is. And he's like, holy cow, this is small. I'm like, yeah, welcome to it. So you have to kind of keep him in it. But you've got to kind of get a coach, help them do it, and then leverage role models. So one of our guys is doing professional services for us, has a coach from Fayaz's old place from Cisco, where he has weekly calls as a coach. So we find mentors, not necessarily in the company, but outside the company. So then you have the skill set revolution, right? And so the entrepreneurs, the technical geniuses with domain expertise, general skills, and then you start to move. This is again, read the bottom before you read the lines, right? Idea creation, business vision, market acceleration. The integrity, the technical genius, the tenacity, the competitive, but you become a little bit more balanced. Because, startups die of indigestion before they die of starvation. So your ability to start, you've got to get your initial set of food, but then you've got to keep eating the same food, otherwise you become scattered. So the balanced, but still keeping competitive is art as you go from the idea and you found recognition and validation to move through it. Then obviously you get to integrity, obviously all the way through this is integrity, and then you got leaders and managers, strategic thinkers, departmental expertise. So obviously on the left, departmental expertise doesn't really matter, because if the thing doesn't start, then there's nowhere to go. It makes sense? I mean, this is all the different stages that we went through. So then you look at who do you hire by stage. So again, on the left, entrepreneurs, technical geniuses, domain expertise. Then you have to productize this thing, right? You can't continue to innovate, otherwise the thing never gets deployed. And you've got to roll out. I mean, you have massive customers in our company that rolls out, and we're critical to the infrastructure. So if we went down, telcos shut down, governments shut down, hospitals shut down. So you've got to productize. So when you get the initial idea, you've got to go through that model. And then you obviously start to lead into product management, and then you go to departmental expertise as it grows. The challenge, by the way, is the people, and Alfred, BA Systems, the A in BA is Alfred, right? Alfred and I are friends, and he used to tell me the people that get you from A to E in a company's life rarely to get you to M, let alone to Z. And so the people that, as you go through this, you try and do your best to nurture them. You want them to succeed. You hire these special forces people, but it's very difficult to see them come through this journey. So having them split out and take on different responsibility and keeping that curiosity is really artful. So for example, at Silvertel, the leadership engineering team that got it off the ground, that created the original product, we literally put in the CTO's office, and we just done the same at Vmware to keep them innovating because they're curiosity people. But the productization people are sometimes different. So you have to kind of go through that different model. Changing roles of the founders. So they become a jack of all trades, creative engines, challenges, they lack business acumen, and then if you move forward, you've got to put them in a role where they can be successful. Visionaries Challenges is the business learning. So you've got to, these people are cultural hubs. It's like doing business in Japan, where the cultural leader is not necessarily the hierarchical leader. So you've got to leverage them. I leverage them like hell at Silvertel at everyone.net to do different things. So this is something that's really important as you go through every executive does this, right? They come in, they do the first month dash, they lack context, they're desperate to add value. The second month they get into this oxygen debt. It's a bit like being caught in a stopper in a rapids. They try desperately to calibrate, they get freaked out, and they need somewhere to land. And your job is to pick them up and look after them. The third month they have to find their home while they're out. But it's everybody comes in desperate to add value, but the pace of this river is fast. Then they get caught up in it, then they spin out if you're not careful. So obviously everybody's seen this with storming, forming, norming, and adjourning. But the key slide here is this one. How you go through different stages. The leader goes from telling to selling to participating to delegating, and your board will go through the same process as that, storming, forming, norming. When I first did my first CEO job, and I've sit on a bunch of boards now, I see it going on like crazy. And then you see VCs, right? They have two sides of the brain, fear and greed, and you start to see them mixing. And you've got to realize that the board will go through the same stage as your management team. As you insect a new board member, it will spin around just like any other team. And you have to be very careful, again, because they all go through the same dash, add value, air pocket, onwards. So this is what the roles of the board do, right? A good board knows what to take offline and what not to. They're always available and helps with culture management and transitions. A bad board reacts without context and criticizes before he coaches. And like I said, I've sit on a bunch of boards, invest in a bunch of companies, and you can see it all the time. So challenges. Culture is hard, exec team is harder, founders management is harder still. It helps if you work with people that have been around, and the board can help. I think that's the last slide. So, lead from the front. Transparency is absolutely key. Culture transformation, you have to get ahead of it, get a plan, and hire adaptive animals, set expectations, and get ready for it. Perfect. So hopefully that wasn't too long. I was whizzing through slides.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. We have time for one question, if there is one. Go ahead.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for the insightful talk. I was just reflecting on one of the points that you mentioned, that startups die more of indigestion than of starvation. If you could just speak about that from your experience having mentored so many startups, where many of the startups made this mistake, and how you would have advised them to actually do it differently. If you could just elaborate on that.
So the question was, what have you seen on starvation versus indigestion and how you deal with it? very hard, right? Because you've got to be able to turn around and, so at Silvertel, you've got to make sure that you nail your first product, your product market fit really, really well. And there's a chance you can drift off if you're not careful to go find a new product really, really quickly. And if you do find one, oh my, is it a good thing to do, or should you nail your first one? At Vmware, we weaved for the first 18 months as we were trying to work out our stuff, and then if I had to go back and do it differently, and all my company know this, I would have nailed the VMware use case way quicker. We got to it, but we were like, oh, I could do this. Oh, you could do this. And just because you could doesn't mean to say you should. So it's like nail your first thing, right? Particularly in the world of software, it's got to the world of use cases. Nail your use cases, then build adjacencies. But you've got to nail it before you move on. Too many people think they've nailed it and move on too quickly.
Perfect. Thank you, Tim. Thanks a lot. And